Thousands of women rallied in Yemen on Monday against the actions of the Saudi-led coalition. They came out to express their anger following the alleged rape of a local girl. According to several Yemeni NGOs, a soldier fighting in the Saudi-led coalition is responsible for the crime. At the same time as the rally, a coalition airstrike on a port claimed the lives of several civilians.
We were at home having breakfast, all safe and sound, when the coalition hit the apartment building. Our neighbor was in his car, and he left it and ran. When he came to take his family, the second strike hit. Women were running in all directions. It was a huge strike.
The news of the airstrike comes days after the U.S. Defense Secretary told reporters that the Pentagon is advising Saudi Arabia on how to avoid civilian casualties in Yemen. The U.S. has a long history of supporting the coalition, including weapons sales. Daniel Hawkins has more.
The Yemeni civil war has been described as the worst man-made humanitarian crisis in decades. Little surprise, all parties involved want a swift, effective resolution. Or so they say.
We will continue to work together for the stability of the region.
We must also reinvigorate urgent efforts to seek a peaceful resolution to the civil war in Yemen, and we support you in this regard.
Perhaps this support is part of the whole ending the war plan. The peaceful resolution may come later. An attempt in the U.S. Senate to limit military support ultimately failed.
Some will argue that American troops are not out there shooting and getting shot at. Well, please tell that to the people of Yemen, whose homes and lives are being destroyed by weapons marked "Made in the USA" on targets chosen with U.S. assistance.
General Mattis argues that sending less arms to the region could actually do more harm than good. An interesting take, given that Amnesty International drew precisely the opposite conclusion, citing a correlation between arms flows into the conflict hotspot and mounting civilian casualties. The question, though, of how exactly the US military ensures their support stays in line with US values remains open.
Does CENTCOM track the purpose of the missions that it is refueling, what targets it strikes, and the results of the mission?
Senator, we do not.
Okay.
On the upside, according to Ambassador Tula, the Saudis are making progress and learning lessons from their US counterparts.
We've provided training to the Saudis in law of armed conflict, how to conduct operations in a way to make absolutely certain that you're taking all necessary measures to avoid any collateral damage. And we see now that the Saudis are starting to slowly adopt some of the measures that we've suggested.
Too slowly, perhaps, for the people of Yemen, with ever louder warnings about the ongoing catastrophe falling on deaf ears.
A former CIA officer told us that the US-Saudi arms deals have an enormous impact on the plight of civilians in Yemen.
The idea that it's civilians who continue to pay the price, the heavy price in Yemen, is simply unacceptable. Whether or not it's Saudi, whether or not it's American-led, American-controlled, or even American-advised, that is no excuse. In the end, one of the big problems, of course, is the recent American deal with the Saudis selling them $12.5 billion in arms. I mean, the Americans may try to stay at arm's length, but frankly, they are involved. It's their weapons that are being used. They do have a very strong influence on the Saudis. And the problem right now is that the Americans seem to be just fine with allowing this to continue to play out as it has. For them to turn around now and tell the Saudis that they have been killing civilians when in fact the Americans and others too, frankly, have had similar problems in other war zones, including Syria, may be very difficult for the Americans to do or say anything about that.